How you doing, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazings. And folks, we're about to break down not 5, not 6, not 7, but 8 free agent relievers that for more reasons than one could be a very nice fit here in this Mets bullpen for the 2024 season as we break down these 8 potential bullpen targets, some of which the Mets have reportedly been linked to already, others very well could be linked to but aren't reportedly yet as we currently record this here on January 18th, 2024, because we all know David Stearns is going to be adding to this Mets bullpen. He's made that abundantly clear, and he's going to do it beyond minor league signings with spring training invites. That I also assure you, which is why the Mets have been so active in this bullpen front. They need a sure setup man for the 2024 season. They still need to add some key pieces. So who could those players be? That is what we're breaking down in today's video. Everything you need to know about these 8 relievers, what you like, maybe what you don't like about them, and everything in between. Also, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button for your boy, as it is the easiest and best way to support the channel. Thank you all so much in advance, and without further ado, let's hop right into this one. Starting off at number 8, and the guy who strikes out Pete Alonso, as you see in the highlights, is none other than former San Francisco Giants reliever, potentially now a New York Mets sooner than later, in John Brebbia. The 33-year-old right-hander has been linked to the Mets as they've shown interest in him so far this offseason, so no one should be shocked if the Mets find themselves acquiring the veteran right-hander. But in just under 40 innings this past season, put up a very respectable campaign with that fastball slider mix. The heater sits right around 95 and can, of course, touch the high 90s on the gun. The slider sits low to mid 80s usually, and he saw plenty of swing and miss, had over 11 K per 9, a season high for him this past year with the Giants, and was utilized both as a reliever and a spot starter. So a guy that can come in and start a couple games for an inning or two, and then they bring in a multi-inning reliever or starter from there. Very interesting, and we know the Mets are going to be very creative with their bullpen this season. They're going to adopt philosophies that we see not only from the Brewers, from the Rays, from the Dodgers, etc., to do anything that they possibly can to just get outs. That is the most important goal here. A sub-4 ERA, a 3.33 expected ERA, which tells you a bit more of what he can control. Brebbia, again, especially in non-high leverage situations, sometimes high leverage if you need him to, can get the job done as another innings eater for this bullpen, but can do it on a more quality basis versus what you currently have in the back end with the guys made available. John Brebbia, one of many names to keep an eye on for the Mets as they evaluate their reliever options this offseason. Here at number 7, we have far and away the riskiest reliever, but also the highest upside reliever you could deem potentially, and that is Shintaro Fujinami, a rookie from a year ago who I was heavily advocating for, coming over from the MPB as a flamethrowing starter. This guy is quite literally wild thing from Major League. He's got a 6-pitch mix, the 4-seam fastball, which touches 101, 102 on the gun. He sits 98 with the heater. So if you want to talk about adding immediate heat to this bullpen that the Mets didn't have last season, oh, you have Edwin Diaz. Let's bring in Shintaro Fujinami too. Would do wonders. Has the cutter, the sweeper, the split finger, if I didn't mention that already, the slider, the curveball. So much to like about Shintaro Fujinami, as he spent his rookie season coming from the MPB and around 80 innings with the Oakland A's and then the Baltimore Orioles. When he signed with the A's, they really started him as a starter. He started and relieved games this past season as a starter, had a lot of struggles, walked everyone and their mother against the Mets as well back in, I think it was an April or May game in 2023. Let's not forget that. So then later on in the season, after being dealt the Baltimore Orioles, pitching a perfect inning against the same Mets team. I purposely picked those highlights to showcase how good Shintaro's arsenal is when it's utilized properly, and to show how piss poor the Mets were in 2023, because goodness gracious, were they abysmal. But why am I advocating for Shintaro Fujinami? Yes, he had a 7 ERA this past season. Look at the expected numbers, multiple runs lower. I think if you can bring him into an organization that knows how to properly utilize him, understands MPP pitchers to the extent the Mets do with Kodai Senga, to not only rekindle that relationship that the fellow countrymen potentially have with each other, but also the impact that he could possibly have even as a setup man. I mean, you look at the six pitch mix, he has a starter's arsenal. He can be stretched out. He can pitch 100 plus innings for you in a season, but he's probably best as a 1 or 2 inning reliever where he can truly showcase that arsenal to its absolute magnitude, just like Edwin Diaz. I firmly believe that as long as Shintaro Fujinami continues his MLB career and is given more opportunities with different pitching labs, unlike the Oakland A's, and I know he had a little stretch of brilliance with the Baltimore Orioles, but then it fell short down the stretch in the season. If you can bring him into the Mets, what they have with their current pitching lab with Germany Hefner, and also what they're continuing to build. I think there's a lot of upside there, especially for a Mets team in 2024 that has playoff aspirations. They're already going to be looking for some wild card pickups. You want guys that can have some ridiculous upside while also some risk involved. That's Shintaro Fujinami to an absolute T. And he, in my opinion, is one of the best arms available out there in the free agent market. It is so wily, it's all over the place. But if you can get that command right, which the Mets have done plenty with a lot of other relievers slash swingman in recent history, they might just find themselves an absolute huge win on a short-term deal here in Shintaro Fujinami. I understand the pros, I understand the cons. This is why I'm advocating for him. I firmly believe that Arsenal is a thing of beauty. That arm is electric. It just all needs to come together. So let's see if it'll in fact be with the Mets or with someone else. Now, here at number 6, we have a reliever that I, too, am a big fan of. Once again, that is the case with most of the relievers in today's video, but one of the softest throwers out there in Major League Baseball, also one of the most effective relievers in the game today, former Houston Astro Phil Maton, the 30-year-old right-hander, is coming off of a tremendous 2023 season. In 66 innings, a 3 flat ERA, a 3.14 expected ERA, a 3.63 SI ERA. His pitch mix consists of the curveball, four-seam fastball, the sweeper, and the sinker. And what I love so much is he sits around 88, 89 miles per hour on his average fastball. But when you look at expected ERA, 90th percentile, expected batting average, 95th percentile, average exit velocity, the guy does not give up hard contact like that whatsoever, not nearly to the degree that you expect from a soft tosser like himself. 99 percentile in average exit velocity, chase percentage, 69 percentile, whip percentage, 90th percentile, K percentage, 76 percentile, walk percentage, 38 percentile, so around 12% below the average in baseball, and that's okay, something they can work on. Barrel percentage, 63 percentile, hard hit percentage, 100 percentile, extension, 96 percentile, ground ball percentage, 54 percentile, just above league average, so he strikes out guys really well. He gets a decent amount of ground balls too, but man, oh man, just the fact to be this much of a soft tosser and to be in the 100th percentile in hard hit percentage is exactly the type of relievers that I know David Stearns is clamoring for. That's why he's like the likes of Brent Suter, who unfortunately didn't go to the Mets, but went to his hometown native, that being in the Cincinnati Reds, on a one-year deal over the past week or so. But we know that David Stearns does like these soft tossers, especially guys that can be very effective in doing so. Phil Maton, I would definitely welcome him here in Queens. My goodness, would he be a nice pickup for the Mets in this bullpen. That's all I got to say about that. Here at number 5, we have James Shiano, a good friend of mine and the co-host of the Mets Stuff podcast, his favorite reliever out there in the free agent market that he desperately wants on the Mets, and I want him on the Mets too. I texted him yesterday. I said, James, what more can you tell me about Ryan Stanek outside of what I can do with my research myself? He's like, simple as this. The guy touches 100 and he's crazy on the mound. Think Mad Max, but even more than that potentially with someone like him. Thinks James Karinchak, times 2. That is how wily, that is how crazy Stanek can get with his emotions on the mound, and I say sign me up. If he can handle the big market, I want that fire in this Mets bullpen. Another guy like Phil Maton, coming from the Houston Astros, has championship pedigree and has worked in a fantastic pitching lab during their time in Houston. Maybe they could share some tidbits here with the Mets organization should the Mets have the luxury of landing either of them. Ryan Stanek here, again, the 32-year-old right-hander, is coming off of a solid season in 2023 at just over 4 ERA. Expected numbers are around the same there, but ultimately in 2022, he had a breakout season where he had a 1.15 ERA, an expected ERA of 3.19. And why do I bring that up? It's because the expected numbers at times can tell you a little bit more. We know that, especially relievers, they kind of go up, down, up, down. So for basing it on recent success, Ryan Stanek is projected and expected to have a very nice season in 2024. I hope that's what the Mets here. He sits 98 on the gun with the heater, just like Jorge Lopez, just like Shintaro Fujinami, just like Edwin Diaz, an absolute flamethrower to help Edwin Diaz and Lopez and said bullpen. He locates pretty well. The command was right around over 3 walks per 9 this past season to just under a 10K per 9. He has a split finger. He has the curveball. If you look at his usage through Baseball Savant, he's kind of up and down in how his utilization was, really how effective he was rather in the 2023 season. But what sticks out is, of course, that fastball velo, which the Mets were horrendous with as a whole bullpen in 2023. The expected batting average is strong. The whip percentage is strong. K percentage above average. Barrel percentage above average as well. So some things that Ryan Stanek can work on, but he is a rubber arm, a guy guy that can easily you 55 to 65 plus innings in the season, however which way you want to utilize him, and again has championship pedigree like Phil Maton. And unlike Hector Neris, he's not asking for 3 years at $50 million, which the Mets are not going to be the suckers to offer. So if anyone does, I apologize to you in advance with that Hector Neris contract. But Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek, I'd much rather settle with one of, if not both of, these free agent relievers coming from the Houston Astros organization. Here at number 4, we have a reliever that I've heavily advocated for this offseason, along with Brent Suter. But now that Brent Suter is off the board, give me Matt Moore, baby. The 34-year-old Southpaw is coming off of a tremendous season, splitting time with the LA Angels, the Miami Marlins, and yes, the Cleveland Guardians, but that did not stop his tremendous production. In just under 53 innings this past season, a 2.56 ERA, a 3.33 expected ERA, a 3.3 SI ERA. You see the pitch mix as well. Why do I love Matt Moore so much? He has plenty in the tank with the fastball. Will be a nice balance between himself and Brooks Raley in this Mets bullpen. Raley's more of that soft tosser versus someone like Matt Moore, who casually sits 95 on the gun with the heater and has some nice breaking pitches, including a knuckle curve. And when we look further here, he had an over 10 K per 9 this past season to just over a 2 walks per 9. Matt Moore, a starter turned reliever over the past couple years, has seen great success in doing so. And I've been a heavy advocate for his since he really started to break out as a reliever with the Texas Rangers over a year ago. When we look through Baseball Savant, pitching run value, 85th percentile. Fastball run value, 71st percentile. Breaking run value, 38th percentile, so could use some work, but again, didn't hurt him much last year. 96th percentile in off-speed run value. Expected ERA, 85th percentile. Expected batting average, 83rd percentile. Chase percentage, 98th percentile. A lot of swing and miss, a lot of chasing. Love that here with Matt Moore, especially for lefty on lefty situations. Whip percentage, 66th percentile. K percentage, 79th percentile. Walk percentage, 79th percentile. 73 percentile rather. Hard hit percentage, 66th percentile. Lots of lots of love here about Matt Moore. I can go all day advocating for him in this Mets bullpen, which means the Mets, of course, aren't going to sign him. Andrew Chafin, Brent Suter, what do they have in common? Relievers I've loved the Mets to sign, and they simply haven't, and they're both southpaws. Will Matt Moore be the game changer here? I'm probably getting my hopes up, but certainly a name to keep an eye on this offseason because he's easily one of the best relievers currently out there in this free agent market. Here at number 3, we have the other co-host of the Mets podcast and Draftnik, Mark Luino's favorite reliever that the Mets should sign this offseason, and it is Robert Stevenson. And Stevenson, I'm a heavy advocate for as well. He's coming off of truly an amazing season, both with the Pittsburgh Pirates and then there with the Tampa Bay Rays. If there's one thing we know about the Tampa Bay Rays, they always get the best out of their pitchers for the most part. He had truly a beautiful, a masterful season this past year. When you look at K percentage as well, my boy had over 13 K per 9 this past season to right around a 2 walks per 9. And his multi-pitch mix, which is headlined by his cutter, the pitch he threw the most last season. You want to know what the opponent batting average was? 101. What was the slug? We're looking at 253. Unbelievable numbers here with the cutter, the slider, the four-seam fastball, the split finger, and the curveball. This guy has literally a starter's mix, which is very appealing when you have someone like this in your bullpen to get creative. And he casually sits 97, 98. He touches triple digits on the gun with the fastball. Another guy that could be a true setup man for someone like Edwin Diaz, and still has so much to give at the young age right now at 30 years old. I mean, I cannot say enough great things about Robert Stevenson. When I look at his numbers for Baseball Savant 2, I understand that he was a little limited in what he could qualify for, but he was in the 90th percentile and fastball velo. Literally, his effectiveness was through the roof. The only numbers that were down for him last year was barrel percentage. He got barreled a decent amount, but it did not amount to great success for the opposing batters because he was tremendous in K percentage, whip percentage, chase percentage. He was quite literally the best in Major League Baseball in all these statistics right now among relievers, among pitchers. So Robert Stevenson, sign me the heck up. A 3.10 ERA, a 2.73 expected ERA, a 2.4 SI ERA. This guy needs to be in New York, Matt. What are we waiting for? If you're looking for a guy that can help you not only for 2024, but beyond, Robert Stevenson certainly fits that bill as, again, someone that could be a true setup man for Edwin Diaz for the ensuing next 2, 3, 4 years. That would be a tremendous get there. Robert Stevenson, keep an eye on the name, one of the bigger fish out there in this market as well. Here at number 2, we have a reliever that I firmly believe if he does not go back to the New York Yankees, very well could be a Met, as he is the other reliever the Mets have shown reported interest in this offseason, and he makes a lot of sense for the club, and that is none other than veteran southpaw Wandy Peralta. Wandy is coming off of another very solid season with the New York Yankees, a 2.83 ERA in 54 innings, a 4.7 expected ERA, which tells you that, yeah, he definitely had some luck on his side this past season, but he was still able to get a strong amount of outs at a respectable level. The year before that, he had a breakout season with the Yanks as well with his numbers, but overall has been pretty consistent. The only thing that wasn't as consistent with Wandy this past season, which was his walk rate, around a 5 walks per 9, which is the case with some of the other relievers we discussed in this video. But why does that not concern me is if you look at his past 5-6 seasons, that is pretty much out of the norm. That's like an anomaly for him. So I firmly believe Wandy's going to get back to being in that, 3.5 tops 4 range. Still something the Mets can work with if need be. And why do I like Wandy Peralta so much? Well, you have the multi-pitch mix of the changeup, the sinker, the slider, and the four seam. He sits 96, 97, 98 on the gun without a problem. You look at his effectiveness as well. The pitch that he threw the most last season, the changeup, had an opponent batting average of 185 and a slug of 337. Very respectable there for Wandy. He's been in playoff runs with the Yanks. He knows what it takes to win in New York. He understands the New York market and the fan base and everything in between. Those are factors that David Stearns certainly cares about when evaluating players. So if one guy has New York experience and profile is very similar to another guy, David's likely going to pick that guy with the New York experience, because you want to have guys that knows what it takes to win here in New York and understands this market. And to rekindle that relationship with Mets new manager and Carlos Mendoza wouldn't hurt. Of course, would do the same then Luis Severino, Harrison Bader to a lesser degree. Point is that beyond the fact of him just being another potential Yankee has-been, Wandy Peralta is still very much in the prime of his career and would be a very effective, more the flame-throwing type southpaw in comparison to Brooks Raley, similar to Matt Moore, can be very effective in his utilization as potentially setup man at times, or however the Mets want to utilize him. One thing that I know about Wandy Peralta, according to Patrick Hennessy, my co-host in the Bridging the Gap podcast, where we discuss all things Mets and Yanks, is that Wandy's a bulldog, and he'll go out there whenever you need him to for the most part. That's something that's appealing to me. I'm sure that is certainly appealing to someone like David Stearns. So Wandy Peralta very well could be a New York Met in the coming days and weeks. We'll soon find out. And here at number 1, we have a reliever that should have never left the Mets, but unfortunately we dealt him away, which was certainly a win trade for the Mets looking back at Marco Vargas and how he already shapes up in this prospect pool. But veteran right-hander David Robertson should come back to Queens and finally be the setup man for Edwin Diaz, which he never got the chance to properly do in his one and only year with the Mets in 2023. D-Rob was everything and then some for the Mets in their bullpen last season. When Edwin Diaz went down, we needed someone to step up, and he came in that closer role without a problem. And if you want to talk about having success in New York, D-Rob knows it better than most during his long time with the New York Yankees. We know that not only Carlos Mendoza is aware of that, but we also know that David Stearns certainly is too. So unless David Stearns is scoffing at the notion of bringing in, a grizzled vet of a reliever on a 1-year deal, I can't imagine why that'd be a big deal. Maybe the money, if anything, because he wants to spread it out and utilize it. David Robertson and a return just makes so much sense as long as he still has interest in wanting to be here. He loved his time with the Mets. He didn't want to get dealt. I wonder if things have changed at all a little bit, considering that Buck Showalter is not the manager. Maybe it doesn't hurt the Mets that they have a former Yank and Carlos Mendoza now, but still really curious to see how D-Rob perceives the Mets versus when they first trade him away, because you could tell he was bothered. He was absolutely killing it with the Mets, went to Miami, didn't have the same amount of success. You could tell that the heart, the interest level probably wasn't the same, and a 3 ERA, a 3.23 expected this past season. I mean, D-Rob, we know so much about him between his breaking ball, between his heater, which still sits in the mid-90s, is still very effective. There's just a lot to like about David Robertson since the beginning. I've been advocating for him for over 2 years now. I remember like it was yesterday when he started breaking out with the Cubs a couple years ago, coming back initially was out with injury, then was playing with the Tampa Bay Rays in playoffs a couple years ago. I was like, oh, D-Rob's looking good again. He's looking healthy. Has a great start with the Cubs in 2022, gets dealt to the Phillies when I really wanted the Mets to get him, carved up the Mets in a game in which I was in attendance at Citi Field later that season, and then ultimately becomes a Met in 2023. Let's make him a Met here in 2024. Edwin never got the chance to properly be paired along with him as that 1-2 punch in this bullpen. So if you're looking short-term upside, a guy that understands New York better than most, understands the Mets organization better than a lot of players currently out there in the free agent market, and knows what it takes to win, need I say more? David Robertson, as long as there's mutual interest there, bring him back. Let's run things back here in 2024. And that'll just about do it for this one, folks. Let me know your thoughts down below. Which reliever out of the 8 would you most like to see land in Queens? Do you want multiple? Do you want one? Do you want none? Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down below. And again, thank you so much for the endless support. Make sure to smash those buttons if you haven't already. And stay tuned for consistent coverage on all things Mets all off-season long. And spring training is right around the corner, so get ready. We're going to have plenty of Mets discussions here on the channel per usual. Thank you again, folks. And as always, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.